do we talk to our kids about how awesome sex is without really encouraging them to go and be promiscuous? How do we tell them about the dangers of sex without making them afraid of it when they're someday married? I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a counseling session with someone, and that has been the problem, that their whole life they were taught that sex was something dirty and bad, and so they get married, and it's very hard to get that out of their head. So we have to be very careful as we talk to our children. It's imperative that we learn the tricks of the trade as far as talking to our children about this very intimate topic. So Dr. Jennifer Morse is on the line with us to help us answer those questions. Dr. Morse, welcome to Smart Life.
Thanks for having me on, Dr. Gina.
Well, it's absolutely a pleasure, and as you know, I'm a huge fan of the work you do at Ruth Institute. The subtitle of Ruth Institute now is Making Marriage Fun Again, or something like that. Tell me.
Making marriage cool, yes.
Making
when
marriage...
we reach out to college students, we're trying to help them to see that marriage is a good way of life, and we are trying to discourage them from hooking up in the dorms and things like that. So this fine line that you're talking about is very important.
Very important. And so I just want to start with sort of what I said in the intro about, here we are. We want to teach kids on the one hand that sex is a great thing, but we don't want them to feel like it's such a great thing that they need to go try it today. and we want to teach kids that sex can be very dangerous. The statistics I read in my monologue today are pretty frightening, I think. And so we want to teach them both things, but we don't want them to get into marriage and think of sex as some horrible, dirty thing that they shouldn't enjoy. So where do we start with that? Let's say we got a brand new baby. Where do we start with it, with a sort of lifespan introduction to the concept of sexuality as it should be for a healthy life?
Well, I think that little kids want to know where babies come from. I think it's important to answer the question that they're really asking. You know, a lot of times adults freak out when they hear this question. And, the child isn't really asking for the full-on sex talk. They just want to know how the baby gets out of the tummy. There's a famous story in my family. My husband, Rob, is an engineer, as you probably know. And, he was an engineer from the time he was a child, right?
Yeah.
And so when he said, where do babies come from, he wanted to know how the baby got out of the tummy. And when his mom explained it, he goes, that doesn't fit. How can that be, So give them the information that they are really asking for, number one, and trying to, and the most important thing, I think, is to tell them that babies come from love between their mother and their father, that mothers and fathers love each other, and then God gives them a baby. And that's where babies come from. You can start with that. It doesn't have to get any more complicated than that. And that already is setting the groundwork in two ways, Gina. It's telling a child that that sex, which you haven't even named yet, but that sex is something good that has to do with mommies and daddies and love and babies. And it's also something that's positive and something's good. And you have given them a sense that the context is important. You haven't lectured them about that. You haven't explained that, but you've set them up to understand that, so that when they're 10 or 12 or something, it's okay for them to have the message that it's something that they're not supposed to be doing, but it's something that is good and something that they can look forward to in a positive way.
So I'm guessing in my head, I'm hearing, and I studied lifespan, psychology, as you know. I'm thinking maybe 3 to 8 is that time where we describe it as love and answer their questions in concrete terms that they understand. And then getting into about 8, 9, 10, we need to take just a little bit of a different tack. Talk to us about the 8, 9, 10, through maybe 13, 14 age.
I think the main thing for parents to do is to kind of intuit where their kids are developmentally as far as how much information they need and can handle. They don't need all the mechanics right away. At some point, you can explain the mechanics. But really, the thing is, the mechanics are the least interesting thing about it. I think
so true.
Both from the child's point of view and then from our kind of perspective as adults trying to inculcate a sensible moral code around the whole thing. The mechanics are not the interesting part. The interesting and important part is that human sexuality is meant to be something that builds up the family. And so you want to be married first and have sex second, and hopefully babies will come. And so that context, setting the groundwork for that context, that is the most important thing that you want to be conveying. And so at no time in there are you saying sex is bad. You're just saying there's a proper context for it.
Yeah. Pretty
And
straightforward.
if you you're not freaked out. I think it's important to remain calm, mom and dad. Remain calm. It's it's not a, it's not you're not going to ruin it. You're not going to do a bad job or something. If you can stay focused on the beauty of human sexuality and really the awesome gift that human love is part of God's creative plan for keeping the human race going.
Hmm.
That's a beautiful reality, and it's not just physical. It's not just emotional. It's also theological.
Yeah.
Very deep, you know. And
Yeah.
so if you can get that across to people, I think a lot of times the mechanics are going to come along for the ride. You know, it's not going to be that complicated when that time comes.
There was a lot of talk. I started sort of a firestorm on my Facebook page when I brought up this topic today because I had some people saying, "Oh, you know, conservatives have ruined this topic. We've been such prudes that we haven't discussed it, and as a result, kids think, well, the last thing I want to do in the world is be a conservative because I think they might not ever have sex." And then on the other hand, you had conservatives saying, "But our culture's so sexualized. We just need to turn off the spigot." You know what I mean? And so, where is that balance? And how can we, as people who just want to really be conscientious citizens, talk about this issue in the media and in our own social settings so that it builds instead of destroys?
I think one thing to keep in mind is what is it that we are positively for? As a cultural conservative, what we're for is lifelong married love. That's what we're for.
Hmm.
When you think about it, that's what kids are for too. I've never met a kid who said, "Yeah, I loved it when my mom and dad got divorced the third time. That was really
Yeah.
a lot of fun for me." I've never known anyone like that. You
Nope.
know, people want the experience of getting married, staying married, having kids inside that context of married love. So we should always be focused on what we're positively for, which is lifelong married love. Now, once you have that as your benchmark, then you go, well, wait a second. Having sex before you're married or having sex with someone you aren't married to while you're married, you know, any of those other situations where we have sex, it's not going to be good. It's going to take away from that ultimate goal of lifelong married love.
Yeah.
So when you have the positive touchstone there, and you're always coming back to that positive touchstone, then the no's, negatives, the prohibitions it makes sense, first of all, and they don't seem so negative because
Right.
you can see that you're building towards something that's really positive. And in our day and time, Dr. Gina, very, very rare. Lifelong married love is very rare today.
Yeah, and
So
quite
people
special
want it.
as you mentioned because that's what I chose to do my dissertation on. My professor told me think about something you want to study that you love to think about every single day of your life, and I chose love through the lifespan. So you're absolutely right, Dr. Morse. Dr. Morse, thank you so much for being with us again. Thank you for your work with Ruth Institute. I hope people will check it out. Very important cultural changes are coming at us, and we need to be equipped. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Dr. Gina.
Up next, we go to your calls and letters. Number 888-650-8176, 888-650-8176, or you can go to the Smart Life page, moneybizlife.com. Click on the Ask Dr. Gina button. More Smart Life with you coming up next here on Money Biz Life Network. You stay tuned.